Stephen Lecce has led the COVID-19 response in schools since the pandemic's beginning. He is the Progressive Conservative MPP for King Vaughan, and the Minister of Education joins us now on the province's plan to keep kids safe in schools amidst a pandemic that's not over yet. And just before I welcome you as our first guest for this, our 17th season, we do have to do this full disclosure thing. Remind everyone that TVO is, well, how do we put this? TVO is a provider of the ministry's distance learning and online learning, not the agenda, the program you're on right now, not the journalism side. We have nothing to do with that, but the ILC, the Independent Learning Centre, has been a distance learning partner with your ministry for almost 100 years, which I think predates you a little bit.
Yeah.
And we put that on the record in the interest of full disclosure. Okay, from where you stand, so welcome now.
Thank you.
From where you stand, are Ontario schools ready to get back to quote unquote normal?
Absolutely. I think it has been 2 exceptionally difficult years, and we owe it to children, to parents, and I think to the frontline staff to return these kids to some sense of normal. I mean, every jurisdiction in the modern world has done so on the basis that it's going to help with their mental and physical health and their academic success. I think we could both accept that there's been learning loss that's transpired in fundamental subjects, reading, writing, and math. Globally, the data suggests that. And so how can we, from a public policy perspective, fix that gap that has emerged? And I believe it's about in-person learning. Stability for kids will be the driving force for their resurgence and, frankly, for their success.
Let me pick up on that, the learning loss, because, and I'm sure you've seen the studies, there are lots of them from the states that have come in already.
Indeed.
Some from here saying that the learning loss is probably the most significant we've seen in 30 or 40 years. And I mean, I don't know how many kids I've talked to who've said the last 2 years were a complete write-off and they learned nothing. And I don't know that they're exaggerating all that much.
Right.
So what do you have planned to deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that, and I think that's the basis for why the government, the Premier and I have been very unequivocal in our commitment to keeping kids in school right to June without disruption. And how we define learning can't just be through the prism of in a class through instruction by an educator. A lot of kids, including perhaps your own children and certainly for myself, learned a great deal about leadership and the development, social emotional learning, soft skills outside of class, but still within our schools, our clubs, our sports, our extracurriculars. These things matter. With respect to the question of how do we address learning loss fundamentally as a government, we announced Ontario's plan to catch up, which is literally designed on restoring and refocusing our learning experience on life skills and job skills. Many parents or many kids say to you that question. Many ask me, why did I learn that? Right? Why did I learn that in the curriculum? How is this going to help me get a job, pay for a house, succeed in my life? And that's a fair question to ask their government. And I think it's about time we start to respond with a focus on skill sets that are relevant to the labor market. I find it odd. There's 500,000 more people working in Ontario. We create the conditions for good private sector, overwhelmingly growth in jobs, and yet we still have a stubbornly high youth unemployment rate nationally and provincially. Something's got to change, and the fix there is curriculum alignment. We have curriculum that is totally unrelated to the skill sets, math and science, updated in 2005 under the former Liberals. So this year, this September, these kids are learning a brand new curriculum focused on those fundamental skills, transferable skills, coding, financial literacy, learning how to budget.
How about civics?
Civics was just, thank you for asking. Civics, which is something for myself, a great passion to inspire the next generation to understand their government, to understand how to navigate government, to understand the principles of sound, accountable government and the Constitution and some of the fundamentals of Canada's history. We just renewed it.
I raise it because that's the kind of course that doesn't necessarily directly lead to a job, although maybe the job you've got right now, but it tends not to directly lead to a job. So is it a reasonable question to ask whether or not this redo of the curriculum is a little too focused on the workplace and not enough on building the whole citizen?
I meet too many parents and too many young people who say that my kid can't or I can't gain a job that provides a dignified wage to own a home and retire one day with dignity. So we need to emphasize fundamental life skills and job skills so that when young people graduate, they actually graduate with confidence and with monetizable skills. But to your question, I agree. Learning is so much more than just the currency of a wage at the end. That's not just the metric of success. We want people to be living service-oriented and, frankly, vocations beyond a job. I just simply believe by emphasizing math and STEM education, we're going to help ensure our kids have a competitive advantage.
Yeah, for sure. These are good things to have. I want to do a little one of these sort of, if you knew then what you know now type of things, right? And hindsight, of course, is 2020. But of course, Ontario has been noteworthy over the last 2.5 years by virtue of the fact that it's had its schools closed longer, I think longer than any jurisdiction in Canada, and among the longest in the world. And we have had concomitant learning loss as a result of that. With the benefit of hindsight, was that the right call?
Look, we are committed when it comes to September. We can't go back, Steve, frankly. When we follow medical advice, we do so using the best advice at that time when this virus was
I get that, but did you learn
emerging.
anything as a result of closing the schools that long?
I think what we learned fundamentally is that kids have a right to be in school and nothing should obstruct that, be it the pandemic or union negotiations. Either way, for 30 years, to be fair, kids have faced disruption in their learning because of public sector teacher education imposed unions on kids literally every 3 years. I mean, I'm 35 years old. I happen to be the youngest Minister of Education. And throughout my life, the constant is not one party in the Premier's chair. We've seen them all. We've seen New Democrats, Liberals, and Conservatives in some sort of cycle. And yet the constant has been disruption by unions. And so the lesson learned fundamentally is kids need to be in school and they need to stay in school, and we need to fight as a government to do that. And I think we've underscored a clear commitment that we will stand up for in-person learning right to June.
I wasn't going to get into this yet. I was going to get to this later, but since you've opened the door, let's go through it. Do you consider teachers to be essential workers?
Well, the government believes that education and public education is essential to the life of a society and a child. Because those words carry legal meaning, right?
That's why I'm asking them.
Right, of course. So the government, of course, believes that they provide an essential service in the sense that, they're helping kids build actual skills that are going to help them get a job.
Right. So if they're providing an essential service, are they therefore essential workers?
Look, we've been very clear when it comes to the next question you will pose of what the government's intend to do. That's not my mandate. I think education is essential to the life of a child. I think it's critical. We can come up with a synonym that maybe is less, punchy. It is critical, and I think we need to fight to make sure kids stay in school. My mandate is to deliver deals that provide stability, normal, stable, and more enjoyable. That's what I'm advancing. That's what the Premier and I care about most. And I just want to thank the staff who provide that critical service, that essential service, because they make a difference every day.
Okay, but people who've had your job before you and people who've had other jobs in government before you, in their wisdom, have decided that there are a group of people in our society that are essential for the functioning of society. And whether they're the people who drive the trains on the TTC or police officers or whatever, there are some people for whom there is no right to strike because they are considered so essential. Do you think teachers belong in that category?
I believe teachers need to focus on keeping kids in school in the context of this labor negotiation.
Not exactly what I'm asking you. Do you think teachers are so essential that they ought not to have the right to strike?
And I believe that educators, in the context of my mandate before me today, should focus on keeping their kids in school.
You're giving me the same answer.
I am, because I believe in it and I insist upon it.
But it's not responsive to the question. Are teachers so essential that they ought not to have the right to strike?
I believe that teachers should focus on keeping their kids in school. If we want to, let's just expand the logic of the question, that educators are providing an important service to children. If we all accept that premise, then nothing, absolutely nothing, should incent a union to walk out of a classroom or a school this year. And there are some unions who are on a path to do that, who actually commenced that path before the government even had the benefit of tabling the first offer. So I believe what we do in our schools, honestly, is amazing. It is inspiring. And I thank the staff who work hard, the parents who give of themselves, and the kids for their focus and their commitments. But I do believe the most important thing we can do, the most critical action government could do, is provide stability for kids through an extraordinary circumstance of the last 2 years. And I'm assuring parents we will do that right to June.
So make them a reasonable offer. I'm sure they'll sign on, and then you've got the peach that you want.
That's the plan. It just
requires 1% a reasonable offer?
It requires two to tango. Well, we've offered up to 8.24% over the course of those 4 years for workers, for CUPE specifically.
So that's 1.25%.
It'd be 2% for those making under 40,000, 1.25 for those making above 40,000. Of course, keeping in mind that we've also maintained the most generous pension benefits, long-term disability in Canada. I don't know any worker that is permitted as an entitlement 11 days at 100%, and then an additional 120 days rather, at 90%. That is what they have. They have the best pension in Canada, and we're actually preserving it. All we're simply asking for of everyone in the system is to ensure that these kids could remain in school to support their mental and physical health. And to your earlier question, getting them back on track with respect to their academics. It's a very reasonable offer we're making.
Think it'll get it done?
You know, I think a lot of people at this juncture 2 years ago when we were in round one of our labor negotiations, didn't think it could be done, frankly.
Different time, very different time. Teachers weren't going to walk out at the beginning of an international pandemic. We seem to, you've just told us we're in more normal times right now, so the groundwork is not quite the same.
I think, if anyone's sort of embracing the values and the voices of parents, they'll know that there's never the right time to walk out, certainly after 2 years of learning loss in children and mental health, the accumulation of real mental health impacts on kids. Okay. And therefore, I believe the right thing to do on a moral basis, given that we're all in this for kids, right? That's ostensibly what we got into this business to do for all of us, for the unions, the trustees, the education, the government, et cetera, is to make sure that kids are not out of school. And I think a fundamental question I've not heard an answer to is, I've heard like, worry not, the teacher unions will say, the kids will be in school in September. But then they're very specific in narrowing that down to the early weeks. I want a commitment for stability, and I want that to be right to June. Let's have a very spirited debate at the table. It's okay to disagree. Factually, the government of the day under every premier and the unions have opposed and disagreed vigorously for 30 years. Mm-hmm. All I ask is that kids remain at the center of this debate, and they do not in any way have an impact imposed on them.
Okay. Let's circle back to some of the discussion around COVID-19.
Sure.
Dr. Moore, the medical officer of health for the province, has said that if someone continues to test positive for COVID, but they're feeling better, for 24 hours they can go back to school. As the Minister of Education, responsible for 2 million kids,
right?
You comfortable with that?
I continue to have confidence and support the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health based on the best emerging evidence that is before us. And I think, look, we want to return to normal. Many jurisdictions in the world and in this country have adopted a similar program. We continue to provide rapid tests. We're one of the jurisdictions that did this first in Canada. In fact, we were the first that provide rapid tests for symptomatic purposes for both the students and the staff. And we also have more frontline staff, more cleaning staff. We've enhanced that right across the board. There's literally 5,000 more staff in our schools to support the safety and the safe return. So the point in short is, yes, I believe it is fundamental and foundational as we try to sort of spur a resurgence or a rebirth of a young person when it comes to why they're in school in the first place. It's really to make sure that they could be in the most normal setting while still having those health and safety elements like the ventilation and the HEPA filtration, which in Ontario is literally leading in this country.
Let me see if I can draw you out a little more on that just to see what your thinking is. Because, and I think it's fair to say that the COVID-19 of today, thankfully, yes, is not the same fatal virus that it was 2.5 years ago when we were caught unawares and really unprepared for it. Mm-hmm. Because of that, do you think that we now ought to be treating students and or teachers and or education workers who contract the disease more along the lines of as if they were having a flu as opposed to COVID-19?
Look, I think parents will make individual decisions based on their own personal risk. What we've done is we've created an environment where kids can wear a mask or not, should they want. It's a safe space to do so. We've encouraged immunization, encouraged educators, parents rather, to speak to their physicians, their pediatricians. It's not a mandate. We have mandated, though, the highest ventilation standards in the country. We've mandated the highest cleaning standards. We've also increased the amount of investment in people, more EAs and custodians and educators to make a difference within our schools. This is all developed with the singular aim of in-person learning being restored from September to June without disruption.
I get that. But every medical person I've talked to says, we're fine right now, but it's summertime. It's 20 plus degrees outside. Once the weather gets worse, once COVID makes a comeback, which everybody is anticipating, what kind of things might you need to see before making a recommendation to the Premier that we may have to look at lockdowns and school closures again?
The government has been entirely clear. Our commitment is to keeping kids in school. We will do whatever it takes to ensure that. These kids have paid borne a great deal of impact over the past 2 years, and it is incumbent on everyone involved to insist that kids remain in school.
So there are no conditions that you can imagine that would warrant closing down schools?
We're laying out a clear, unambiguous commitment to in-person learning. Well, of course, Steve continued to follow the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health, but he himself said, and I quote, "I'm confident that this school year will be just that, safe and healthy." Last week, the Children's Health Coalition echoed similar context of the necessity of in-person learning without disruption, which represents all the major pediatric hospitals in this province. We agree with the medical community. Kids need to be in school and stay in school, and we will fight to ensure they do.
I know you're not the colleges and universities minister. You're responsible for everybody before they get to post-secondary. Right. But we do notice that Western has decided that anybody who wants to go on campus has got to be triple vaxxed and wear a mask to go to a class. That's putting a marker down pretty unequivocally. Why do you think it's okay for Western, but that's not a marker that you want to follow for the pre-secondary?
Well, you have to ask that institution, because that's not the program or expectation in every post-secondary in the province, as you know. All I know is that the Chief Medical Officer of Health of this province, including the local Medical Officer of Health in London himself, strongly believes that in-person learning is critical. And we have brought forth a program with more mental health, with a tutoring expansion program to help kids with catch-up, with more cleaning, with screening, and of course with rapid tests and ventilation standards that are unmatched in this province, in this country. I think that is all brought forth over 2 years of incremental progress to get us to a point where we can confidently look a parent in the eye and say we have done everything humanly possible. We are leading in virtually every metric when it comes to risk mitigation. And I believe firmly, as a matter of philosophy, on a moral basis, from an academic and from a health and safety, you talk to those physicians and you look at the challenges of mental health and the impacts on young kids, eating disorder data, it is honestly very staggering and deeply disturbing.
For sure.
We have an obligation to keep kids in school. And I'm saying to families that together, if we as individuals, for parents watching, if they could exercise an element of caution, make sure their kids are truly screened, keep them home if they are sick, if we do some responsible individual choices, we can ensure that these kids remain in school, and it would be of great benefit for them.
Let me ask you in our last 30 seconds here, and admittedly it's a bit of a touchy-feely question, but,
Sure.
but you've got one of the big jobs in cabinet, right? 2 million kids. Thousands of schools all over the province. At the end of the day, as the cliche goes, when the head hits the pillow, what do you worry about that's on your watch?
I think most especially is the future of young people in this economy. The disruptions in this economy, the changes in landscape when it comes to housing affordability, the displacement of jobs through technology and AI. It really comes down to what is the quality of life and the economic future of a child in Ontario. If you're a 5 or 7-year-old, what does 15 and 25 years look down the road? And I think what we're doing when it comes to modernizing the curriculum, emphasizing STEM, life and job skills, budgeting, financial literacy, coding, understanding AI, learning about a visa or a mortgage, or learning how to pay taxes, those are skill sets, frankly, that I think generations of kids wish they learned, that they finally will under our government. And so when it comes to the problem, conversely, there is a solution, and we can empower these kids to learn skills that I think are going to help them succeed. It's, again, not just through the currency of wages. It's about giving them a quality of life where they could perhaps own a home and support their kids in their post-secondary or skilled trades ambitions. I want these families, these young people, to grow up with that fire in their belly to be hopeful and optimistic. And I think for some young people, it's frankly one of the reasons why I ran 4 years ago. A lot of young people in this province and this country, I'd submit, lost that, that desire to be ambitious because it was so difficult. I mean, like, who the heck could afford $1 million home even a couple of years ago? It almost seemed like the system was designed against so many young people. And I think what is frankly empowering is to see young people in governments at all levels stepping up because we've got skin in the game. And I like that the system of education under our government is really focusing on the skill set that are going to help them succeed, not just when it comes to the jobs, but even the social emotional learning skills, the mental health skill sets, learning how to debate civilly. You talked about civics, learning about misinformation and the abuse of information online when it comes to creating a democratic society where young people actually know what is legitimate and what is quote unquote fake news, if I could invoke that verbiage.
I've heard it said before.
And so but those are skill sets necessary in the future of a prosperous country and a democracy. And we need both. And right now, I'm fighting to ensure, and I think our government broadly, kids are set up with the tools for long-term economic success, but also that we're building a thoughtful, civically engaged, entrepreneurial society of citizens that believe in this country, are proud of their country, and want to give back.
That's the Minister of Education for the province of Ontario, Stephen Lecce. We thank you for helping us kick off our 17th season here on TVO. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.